Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to all of my 400 affiliates across the world. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside of the Golden State. Thank you for listening. This is my last live broadcast of the year 2020, which for many people can't be gone soon enough. But for other people, it wasn't that bad. I had the most interesting conversation yesterday with a physical therapist working on everything that's wrong with me, and there's a lot. I'm going to log 1,100 miles this year with 4 miles today. And that's because of relieffactor.com, of course. But it's also because we have a lot more time on our hands, and I just wasn't going to sit around. And that causes things which you get good benefits with that. You lose weight, get better health overall. But you get to be 64, stuff starts to break in your lower back and in your neck. And so working that out yesterday, he's had the best year ever. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, more people are doing exactly what you did, exercising more, and they're hurt more. And so COVID economically has had a very K-shaped impact, but the tragedy far overwhelms any good news for some people. I look at the story last night. Louisiana GOP Congressman-elect Luke Letlow died of COVID. 41 years old. 41, survived by a wonderful wife, 2 beautiful children. Living the dream. He'd been the chief of staff to a congressman who retired. He followed him. And Luke Letlow died of COVID-19 at age 41. So it is a very dangerous disease. And the good news is 11.5 million doses of the vaccine have been distributed. 2,127,000 people have gotten their first jab in the United States. Now that means that the local governments are blowing it, or they're not reporting it. There is some speculation that they're really bad at reporting and they're really good at jabbing. In other good news, terrific, great news, the Oxford COVID vaccine has been approved for emergency use in the United Kingdom. Now that's a funny vaccine. That's number 3 to be approved. There's Pfizer, Moderna, and now the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. It's a funny vaccine because it's 78.4% effective when you get one jab at full strength. But when administered at a half dose, then a full dose, it's up to 90% effective. Now remember, the United States has 94 and 95% effectiveness of the vaccine, respectively. So it's better to get one of the U.S. vaccines. And my official toxicologist of the Hugh Hewitt Show says, get Moderna if you have a choice. I don't think anyone's going to have a choice. I think if it comes to me, when it comes around my turn, if they ever tell us what the rules are in Orange County, California, where I am for a couple of weeks, I'll go get jabbed by whatever they've got. I don't care. I'm going to take it. But the tragedy of Congressman Letlow, Congressman-elect, he had not yet been sworn in. He wouldn't have been sworn in until the new Congress on January 5, is that while it is overwhelmingly a disease of the old and the fragile, it has got tentacles that go everywhere. The biggest news of the day comes from the United States Senate, where Mitch McConnell has declined to rush through an additional $1,400 of COVID relief per person eligible. That's any household making under $150,000 a year, saying we'll consider increased spending, but we've got to add some other things in there that President Trump wants, including Section 230 reform. I think he also wants to bring in the state aid and the liability protection. People do not understand how important that liability protection is, and I applaud Mitch McConnell for keeping his eye on it. Yes, the checks are nice for people who have lost everything, but the businesses that are hanging on, like the PT that I went to yesterday, who's having a good year, if they get sued by the cottage industry of lawyers who will spring up to sue businesses alleging COVID negligence, it will all be gone. We can't do that, and Leader McConnell knows what he is doing. Meanwhile, in Georgia, new polling, stop me. I'm not going to tell you what new polling is. Nobody knows. Go and vote early in Georgia. Go today. You can vote today and tomorrow, and then early voting is over. So really, why won't you go and vote in Georgia today? Now, the early voting numbers are good. They're healthy. I'm very confident for Perdue and Loeffler. Senators Perdue and Loeffler are mainstream Americans. They're sort of right down the middle, center-right people. They're fully endorsed by Donald Trump. If you're a Trump person, in fact, here's Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. He's going back on Monday for Senators Perdue and Senator Loeffler, cut number 8.
We're gathered here tonight to ensure, a very important word, ensure, because these are two great, great people that I know so well and respected by everybody in Washington and beyond, that David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler win the most important congressional runoff probably in American history. I really believe that. I think it's an American. There's never been
because
a time
it means control of the Senate stays with the Republicans. Thus, defenses stay up, spending stays controlled, investigations are conducted. And I want to remind people, the number of investigations per presidential cycle is pretty constant. There won't be any made-up witch hunts like the fake impeachment that took our eye off the Wuhan virus ball, unless you are a Hugh Hewitt show listener. We were all over it in January. I read Lawrence Wright's new piece in the New Yorker about it being hailed as exhaustive. Lawrence Wright is a great, great writer, and it's a very good report. It is not exhaustive. I know things he doesn't know, and so it's not exhaustive. I wish he'd called me. And he does not cover the media's collapse. He does not cover the consequences of the impeachment. He alludes to the fact that Americans a year ago were gearing up for an impeachment trial. Nancy Pelosi was sitting on the articles of impeachment. It was all fake, all silly, all stupid, and the most partisan and bankrupt impeachment in American history. And Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, we have a lot of debt owed to them because of the inability of Americans to focus on the threat coming out of China that Robert O'Brien and Matt Pottinger are detailed as bringing to the president early in January, saying this is going to be the most important national security crisis of your administration. And they were right. And they were opposed by some of the globalists, and the administration didn't want to upset China. And now, to get to the bottom of this, and to get to the bottom of why shutdowns have been so onerous and vaccine distribution so spotty, the vaccine, it's a miracle. We've got 2 of them in the United States, another one in the United Kingdom. China says it has one, but who believes China on anything? I wouldn't take a Chinese virus vaccine, would you? I mean, really, would you? The other headlines of the day about China, by the way, the Wall Street Journal I'll come back to. They are plotting a, quote, rectification drive to bring Jack Ma's ant group to heel. Beijing is going after financial tech's most lucrative units because it is a communist country. We forgot that for 40 years. We're not. I told you yesterday the Wall Street Journal story pushed back on Xi's vision for China, spreads beyond the United States. Not far enough. The EU, the European Union, and China have agreed to a new investment treaty. That is bad news. I'll talk with Congressman Mike Gallagher about that a little bit later today. In Great Britain, though, the arrival of another vaccine, that means the West. It's the United Kingdom and the United States that have gotten the 3 vaccines that work, and the rest of the world waits upon us. Israel's got the most rapid COVID inoculation drive. They've gotten a bunch of stuff from Pfizer. They've inoculated 500,000 of their citizens in 9 days, and that is terrific. But we got to do better in the United States at the local government level. The public health officers have to take over and say, your committees are nice. We're done with committees. We're doing A, B, C, D, and we're doing it at these places, and we're doing it in this order, and post it on the website and tell people where they can go and get rolling. Then later in the show as well, I have to talk about, to conclude the rundown, the Wall Street Journal shocker, how clogs clump back into style. Really, chunky clogs have become improbably trendy with brands like Chanel, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton. Now look, Dwayne never stopped wearing clogs. He has been clogging for 20 years of this radio show, 20 and a half years of this radio show. He's wearing clogs this morning, in fact. If we can go to the weather camp. Well, we don't have time to go to the weather camp. So Dwayne has never stopped wearing clogs, but actually they've gone out of style except for eccentrics like Dwayne. And so we will talk about the return of clogging as the show progresses today. But Georgia, go and vote. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, stop what you are doing. If you're driving to work today, pull over, safely find where you can go and do an early vote and get it done. It's going to be a 1 or a 2 vote race, maybe. I hope it's a blowout for left-wing and Perdue. We cannot take the chance. Go and vote. Come back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The argument the president is making is that because so many laws were violated, so many time periods were violated, therefore enough fraudulent votes were filed so that it would overturn the margin of victory for Joe Biden in enough states to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. Do I believe that that's going to work? No. Not because it's not credible, because I don't really know. I've just read the brief by Peter Navarro, which I thought was pretty persuasive. I've heard the denials by Dominion, and Dominion has filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell and others, including Rudy Giuliani. That's going to be very serious. And assuming the lawsuits are not thrown out, there will be discovery, and we're going to really have to have a real discussion and exchange over what happened. It won't be enough to overturn the election, but maybe we can get down to exactly what happened, because truth is a complete defense in defamation. And if Sidney Powell has the truth and she's being sued, she's going to win, plaintiff's going to lose. So we'll find out. I do know this. Hillary told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And as I've talked about it the last couple of days, in January 2017, when a man named Donald John Trump was president or president-elect, there were 7 House Democrats, 7, who challenged the electors and said he was elected fraudulently because of Russian interference, and said there'd been voting machine manipulation and malfunction. Is this thing on?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
They're not going to wake
I
up.
didn't say just the rhinos. I said the rhinos and the milquetoast Republicans.
Fine, the rhinos and the
Roy Blunt.
Right. So that'll really work. That'll do it. Here, give the Senate to the Democrats. That'll wake you up.
Or just keep playing the game and keep getting made a fool of.
Okay, that's purely. It's an emotional response. There's nothing I could say. It's either one or, you know what? Then no, by that logic, no Republican should vote. It should be 0 votes for the Republican. And the Democrats will just say, boy, did that work. All right, look at how we scare Republicans from voting. Oh, well done, Republicans. You screwed yourselves great. Now we have the whole country, Senate, House, presidency, because some Republicans are pissed off at the election results. That's mature, folks. That is real mature. But listen, the human being is rarely rational. Rarely. That's the tragedy of the human condition. Emotions are more powerful. That's it. So it's pure, it's 100% true on the left, and it is apparently to some percentage true on the right as well.
Welcome back, America. To you at last live broadcast day of the year. Hootie was always difficult to play with. Very demanding on the bass players. But that voice. Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. Let me check the market, brought to you by Birch Gold. Always go to Birch Gold for your gold needs. You need to move over 10% of your investment, retirement account, your IRA, your 401k, 10 to 25%. Go to hughgold.com. And they'll send you the info kit. Or just text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. You're balancing out your portfolio. You want to own some gold and just put it in your safety deposit box and text Hugh to 474747 or go to hughgold.com. Gold is going to be, it's at, what is it this morning? $1,883.20. $1,883.20 an ounce. Now, it never loses its value. It goes down a little bit. Sometimes it goes up a little bit when it churns. But when inflation comes, you'll want to own gold. And I do not know how we avoid inflation. I do not know how with $4.5 trillion in new debt. Now, it's necessary. I understand this is a once-in-a-three-generation crisis, and we've had to shotgun money everywhere, and we haven't shotgunned enough to the right places, and there's a lot of waste. But when the acceleration of money increases, and it will, gold will pick up. Now, the 10-year Treasury is still at 0.93, and the gold is already at $1,883 an ounce when the interest rate is at 0.93. I can only imagine. Now, the market report from yesterday, brought to you by Birch Gold over at hughgold.com. The Dow went down 68 points. The NASDAQ went down 49 points, and the S&P went down 8 points yesterday. Now, overseas, the Hong Kong market boomed overnight, went up 2%. That's because the Chi-Coms, the Chinese Communist Party, are taking over fintech over there. And so they're applauding fascism as it creeps into the marketplace. I don't understand that. But there are also green numbers in England and Germany, and I think that green number in England is going to go more as we get increasingly close to the distribution of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. But today, who knows? I'm just telling you where gold is, and gold's at a good entry point. It's always at a good entry point because I always believe 10 to 25% of your wealth in precious metals. Put it in the bank, own it, gold, put it yourself in your safety deposit box, buy it from Birch Gold, or roll over a part of your retirement account. Go to Hugh Gold to find that out. Now, as I've been telling you all week long, this weekend, you want to be inspired as the new year begins, go to From Poor to CEO at salemnow.com. The story of Herman Cain. I was talking to Fetchy and Mrs. Hewitt, what are we watching on New Year's Eve? There was a list put out yesterday of New Year's Eve movies, and I've never watched An American in Paris. Now, if I had a producer, they would play some music from An American in Paris when we come back in the next segment. That seems to be the choice. But if you have already seen An American in Paris, go see From Poor to CEO. You'll just get all juiced up like a teenager reading Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged for the first time. You'll get all full of yourself because Herman Cain moved mountains. Herman Cain ran through walls. Herman Cain was a force majeure. And you can find him over at From Poor to CEO at salemnow.com. Great New Year's resolution. Also, we are at the end of the year. The last chance you have to give to Prison Fellowship's Angel Tree program to keep people in prison long-term connected with their children. And this audience is so great. You and the audience of all the Salem hosts combined sent 41,000 Christmas presents, Bibles, and notes from mom or dad or both in jail to the children who otherwise wouldn't have connected with them. That's what Angel Tree and Prison Fellowship does, and that's why Year in Giving is happening today and tomorrow for a lot of people as they sit down, they see how much they have left, they look at their taxes, they figure out. In Arizona, you get a tax credit. If you're not using that tax credit, honestly, you're giving your money to the government instead of giving it to Prison Fellowship or another good and worthy cause like Great Heart School. But Arizona, you get a tax credit. I don't want to say what it is. I don't know what it is. Go look it up. Arizona tax credit changes every year. Doug Ducey's doing such a good job over there, and the Arizona legislature is doing such a good job. Go look it up. But a tax credit means you save 100% of the money that you give away. In other states, you only save your tax bracket. In California, it's close to 50% for people with a lot of money, and it's down around 40% for people with a little bit of money. But you get a tax deduction for everything you give away somewhere in the United States, a tax deduction. And in places like Arizona, that tax credit, don't let it go by. It just reduces your state liability. Arizona should have that model should be replicated everywhere. But don't forget Angel Tree at the top of HughHewitt.com. Come right back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think John Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So what happened back in 2018 is Brian Kemp, who made all these wonderful promises about being this rock star conservative. We've aired his ridiculous advertisement many times here on this program. And he takes office. Stacey Abrams never concedes. Now, she never conceded, not out of vanity, because that's how we mocked her. But instead, she was up to something else. She was up to a legal claim and a challenge to change the Georgia voter rolls. So she got advice from some very wise and capable lawyers who told her, do not concede under any circumstances whatsoever, similar to kind of what Hillary Clinton said. We're going to go raise tens of millions of dollars for you to go sue Kemp and Raffensperger. Now, the lawsuit was pretty well put together. The lawsuit, because Stacey Abrams had a lot of money and a lot of time, detailed real human beings that submitted real ballots that were rejected because the signatures were off. She found very good stories to back this up. The lawyers framed them very well, and they sued under a violation of the Civil Rights Act, or at least the Voting Rights Act, I think is it's the Voting Rights Act, which is, I think, a component, or it came after, of the Civil Rights Act. It was an amendment to it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Let's listen to Nicole Wallace, not just on the president, but on all Republicans. Video cut 11.
I think Republicans are concerned that there just might be a little shame injected into the political system again. Under Donald Trump, they could let people go without unemployment insurance because Donald Trump didn't care. Under Donald Trump, they could let people end up in food bank lines because he didn't care.
I'm not sure I'm going to watch American in Paris. This is Samara. This is, as the fetching Mrs. Hewitt told me, it is a movie constructed around dancing as opposed to dancing in a movie. So I'm not really sure we're going to go there. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Last live broadcast of the year. Thank you for listening. Can we go to the Weather Center, please, and check in with Generalissimo? Have you got the whiteboard up, Generalissimo? Oh, you changed your clogs. You changed your clog. You didn't like people knowing about that.
I was showing the clogs on the camera.
But you did not want people to see your clog. Where are they? Show them your clogs.
I don't even know what a clog is.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I want to see your Weather Center whiteboard. Wichita just had an earthquake. Wichita is woke. 14 minutes ago, a 3.8 rolled through Bel Air, Kansas, which
wait,
actually...
Wait, a 3.8?
I know, and they're exploding on Twitter.
Do you know what we call that here in California?
Someone spilled the coffee.
We call that a trash truck going by.
Yeah, it is really not an earthquake in California, but in Wichita, they're woke. All of Wichita is woke at this hour because they had a 3.8. And so can you use the weather board to show us that? If you're watching on my YouTube channel, you can see the weather board is being illustrated, the 3.8 earthquake.
That would be Kansas. Where was this earthquake?
That's not really where's Colorado on that map? So you're going from left to right.
Yes.
And what's between Colorado and Kansas? Is that Atlantis?
Apparently now the San Andreas Fault is between them.
Is that the lost continent of Atlantis?
Yes.
You are not much of an artist.
This is now the earthquake fault, apparently.
You'll have to watch on YouTube.
The massive Midwest 3.8 earthquake
Dwayne
fault.
is in a radio business for a reason. He is not an illustrator or a television personality because his Kansas-Colorado map is a pretty amusing Kansas and Colorado map, and the lost city of Atlantis, or maybe that's the treasure of the Sierra Madres in there. That's pretty funny. Thank you.
We don't need no stinking bodges.
Yeah, we don't need any boundaries. Go away, out of the Weather Center. Let's get serious. Jake Sullivan is going to be Jake Sullivan is really president. Now, Ron Klain is also really president. Together, those two are really president with Dr. Joe Biden. They're all three the triumvirs. Now, in ancient Rome, there were two sets of triumvirs. There was Marcus Crassus and Pompey the Great and Julius Caesar, the first triumvirate. And then there was, Lepidus, Augustus, and Mark Antony, the second triumvirate. And eventually the triumvirs fall out and they stab each other and go to war and kill each other off, that sort of thing. But that's ancient Rome. The triumvirs of Team Biden are Dr. Joe Biden and Ron Klain and Jake Sullivan. And we have heard very little. Ron Klain is really smart. I think Dr. Joe Biden is very, very sharp. And Jake Sullivan's a genius. So we have not heard much. They're not tipping any cards at all. Dr. Biden allowed Joe Biden to go out yesterday and give some remarks. And this is what he said, cut number 13, the president-elect.
President-elect Joe Biden on the rise of coronavirus cases in the U.S. And as we end one of the most difficult years as a nation, I remain optimistic about our future. The vaccines have been discovered and developed, and there's more to come, we believe, give us enormous hope. Our economy is poised to come back and come alive. And I can see a return to normalcy in the next year. I also see incredible opportunities for our nation in the years ahead, in job creation, clean energy, racial equality, and much more. But we need to be honest. The next few weeks and months are going to be very tough, a very tough period for our nation, maybe the toughest during this entire pandemic. I know it's hard to hear, but it's the truth. As Roosevelt said, I think the American people can take whatever we tell them if we tell them straight from the shoulder. We need to steel our spines for what's ahead. We need to follow even more closely the recommendations to slow the spread of the virus. And each of us needs to do what we can to protect ourselves, our families, and our fellow Americans. We're going to get through this. Brighter days are coming, but it's going to take all the grit and determination we have as Americans to get it done. So today,
I actually believe it will be a year of extraordinary economic growth, and it will be much more quickly a vaccinated population in the United States because the county governments are going to figure it out. And the president-elect and Dr. Joe Biden and Ron Klain and Jake Sullivan aren't going to have a lot to do with that. They really aren't, because it's local governments have always done the vaccination. The public health official, they're called counties in 48 states, parishes in Louisiana, and covens in Pennsylvania. Commonwealth is a funny place. Any place with Pittsburgh is a funny place. Pittsburgh Steelers, funny team. But I do believe we will get distribution worked out and production ramping up, and everyone's going to get the jab, as they say in Great Britain. But then President-elect Biden slipped a little bit. Cut number 14.
I hope that President Trump will listen to him. He can do it too. It would make a huge difference for President Trump to say, wear masks. I hope the president will clearly and unambiguously urge all Americans to take the vaccine once it's available. I took it to instill public confidence in the vaccine. President-elect Harris took hers today for the same reason. And when the president's doctors recommend it, President Trump should take it and instill the same degree of confidence.
So did you catch that? The president does urge everybody to take the vaccine who is eligible and in their turn. Kamala Harris is the vice president-elect, not the president-elect, but we're going to get used to that. The president-elect is himself not known for eloquence and does that a lot. So we're just going to get used to that. And I am going to wish him luck and good Godspeed and pray for him, like I do for every president and for the vice president-elect. But to suggest that the president hasn't taken the vaccine and then to add whenever his doctors tell him to do it is actually not shooting straight from the shoulder. He ought to have said, and the president of the United States recommends you get the vaccine as well, and he hasn't taken it because he's had it. So all of you people out there, this is what the president-elect should be doing. All of you people who've had the virus, don't go get the vaccine. Not only will you take a vaccine away from someone who does not have any antibodies, but we don't know what it does fully for people who've had the virus. We don't know if you have to get it. We don't know if we will find that out. But in the meantime, stay out of the way. That would be shooting straight from the shoulder. Now, Jake Sullivan came out yesterday and talked to NPR. And Jake Sullivan is the Robert O'Brien of the incoming administration. Very smart, a lawyer. I always like having a lawyer in that job. I think that is a smart thing. And I know by reputation and by people who know him, Jake Sullivan is brilliant. I think we have a great national security advisor coming in. But he said this complaint, which is better left unuttered. Cut number 17.
But what I am saying is that the risk that we will be delayed in making decisions on this issue, as many other issues, is higher than it should be because we are not getting the kind of open and transparent cooperation that we need and that the American people deserve.
Now, I do believe there ought to be open and transparent cooperation at every level, and I believe Jake Sullivan is getting it from his counterpart. I believe Jake Sullivan is getting it from his counterpart and that there is a landing team at the Department of Defense. I do not know if they have clearances. I do not know if the President Trump has directed people to cooperate with the DOD team or not. I don't know any of that. But even if there is obstruction, you emphasize the positive. And I know there's no obstruction at the NSC. I know that. I know that for a fact. I've talked to the National Security Advisor before I left from D.C. about how he intended to conduct transition conversations with Jake Sullivan. I didn't hear a complaint about it either. What I heard was the Pentagon, cut number 16 from Jake Sullivan.
Well, he's wrong. I mean, we're now talking to one another on December 29th. It has been 11 days since December 18th. In those 11 days, there has not been a meeting granted to the transition team. And, we're looking at, as I said before, a substantial number of very specific, important requests for information that they are not responding to.
Now, I think that's bad news on the part of the DOD and the acting Secretary of Defense and everyone at DOD. I think I would answer every request provided that someone was cleared to receive the information. However, I would not air that complaint. There is no upside to doing so. None at all. You can criticize them after you're in power. There might be a reason not to tell you. That's the one thing transition teams don't know. And then finally, the key question of the hour is indeed the key question of the hour. And I think they know from the NSC, cut number 15.
What, if any, systems, whether classified or unclassified, whether directly connected to the Department of Defense or connected to major contractors, have been compromised, what the extent of those compromises and breaches have been, and what steps are being taken to remediate that?
Now, that is about the Russian invasion of cyber systems in the United States a few weeks back. Now, as I said, I think Jake Sullivan, the incoming National Security Advisor, has complete access to Robert O'Brien, the existing National Security Advisor. And that question has been asked and answered, I'm sure. I haven't asked that of NSA O'Brien. And the reporter didn't know enough to ask Jake Sullivan, have you received no information on the cybersecurity? I will follow Jake Sullivan with great interest. I hope he comes on and does the show. Robert O'Brien came on the show a lot. Secretary of State Pompeo came on the show a lot. I hope Tony Blinken does. But I read the full account of the interview, and I am uneasy about China. Because Jake Sullivan, look, there's a lot of politics going on. The vice president, now the president-elect, is trying to make it appear we're in a deep, dark hole when, in fact, the ladder has been built and we're halfway up it with the vaccine. And no one believed it was possible. Operation Warp Speed is a great success. But they're trying to make the hole deeper and the climb harder to try and create a great depression-like glow around Joe. And that ain't going to work. Americans are too smart. They do not like the lockdowns. They want to go get the vaccine, and the local governments are screwing it up. That's the bottom line. When I come back from break, more on this subject after I talk to Michael Oren in Israel about the imminent elections there. I told you I went to the physical therapist yesterday, the ART, active reflex therapy, and that's because my neck is just messed up, and my knees pop every time I sit up. Stand up. They go click, and that's not a good thing. Now, Relief Factor will not help the knees or the neck. It does help with minor aches and pains, which you get when you do what I have been doing, which is 1,100 miles this year as of today. And I take it every hour right now. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega, the 4 natural supplements that support the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that come with exercise. And I think of those millions of people Dr. Sadik told me about, millions of people across the United States are exercising for the first time, and they're sore and they're hurt and they've done the wrong thing or they've used the wrong technique. So they go to see an ART therapist, a physical therapist, a chiropractor, and I think to myself, I wonder if they're using ReliefFactor.com. They ought to be. So if you're one of those new athletes, one of those new people who are out there or doing more of what you always do, remember, ReliefFactor.com can help you. Please also remember HonorBoundCoffee.com. Started reading Congressman Michael Waltz's book last night, Warrior Diplomat. And Congressman Michael Waltz talks about the burden carried by military families. It's early in his book. Warrior Diplomat is about his time as Special Forces Green Beret in Afghanistan and his time as a special advisor to Dick Cheney. And he talks mostly about the families. Well, help those families by getting your coffee from HonorBoundCoffee.com. Come right back, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Let's listen to Nicole Wallace, not just on the president, but on all Republicans. Video cut 11.
I think Republicans are concerned that there just might be a little shame injected into the political system again. Under Donald Trump, they could let people go without unemployment insurance because Donald Trump didn't care. Under Donald Trump, they could let people end up in food bank lines because he didn't care about programs to secure their. A lot of people have temporary economic crises that will be alleviated if we kill the virus and people can open up their businesses again. But Republicans don't feel pressure because of the suffering, because people have been suffering for many, many, many months. Republicans are afraid that we might reintroduce shame into the political ecosystem. And I think that what I detect in McConnell is relief. I don't think McConnell liked working with Donald Trump. I think he was craven enough to know that he could put whatever judges he wanted on the United States Supreme Court, just call Trump again and say, hey, do Gorsuch, do Kavanaugh next, and let's do a Hail Mary with the real right-wing lunatic. I mean, I don't think that Mitch McConnell has any distress or despair about working with Joe Biden.
That was Michael Steele, wasn't it? Chortling along. Mike, that was Michael Steele. This is incredible. They're lecturing us about shame, and the former chairman of the RNC is chortling along about that deranged woman's attack on all Republicans who said for months and months and months the president didn't care. You mean specifically the 5 months that Nancy has blocked the COVID relief package? Those 5 months, Nicole Wallace?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.org.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined from Israel by Dr. Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, former deputy minister in the government 3 governments ago. And he's going to fill us in on what the heck's going on in Israel. Dr. Oren, congratulations. Israeli public health officials have inoculated 650,000 people, which is a lot higher percentage than has happened in the United States of the population. That's a great rollout. Have you decided yet what you're going to be doing in the March elections?
I have not yet, but many people have not yet. Let's go back to the vaccination. It's an amazing thing. Israel will probably be the first country in the world to be completely vaccinated. I've already had my first round. I'm ready for my second round. It's very well organized. It's impressive. And the big winner here is going to be Benjamin Netanyahu, who has brought millions of these vaccines to the United States and getting on the phone every night with the CEOs of Pfizer and Moderna and getting this whole thing running. And he's going to run on his victory here and getting this country so quickly and swiftly, effectively vaccinated.
Yeah, let me ask you, Dr. Oren, in the United States, local governments have screwed this up completely. That we got 12 million doses of the vaccine out and 2 million doses administered. What did Israel do to make this, what did Netanyahu do to make this rollout effective?
Well, we have a lot of things going for us here that they don't have in the United States. First of all, our entire medical system is computerized. Every citizen in the state of Israel has a little magnetic card. You put that card into a computer. They'll tell you your age, any previous existing conditions, any medications you're taking. So we get a text message telling us where to go, what time to get our vaccine, and it's timed in a situation you don't have to wait a long time in line. It's very, very swift. We're a smaller country. Our population is condensed into a country which is the size of New Jersey, but 62% of it is desert, so we're very, very concentrated. And there's a central authority, whereas in the United States, authority is very much decentralized. And so it's a very different situation, but it's working really, really well here, I must say. And again, that's going to have a profound impact on the outcome of these elections.
When do you have your second jab, as they say in the United Kingdom, Dr. Oren?
The 14th of January.
That's amazing. Good. That's great.
Counting down the days. It's terrific. No, it's great.
I urge everyone to go to Times of Israel because there's a story on the Prime Minister running on the inoculation program. But I want to know which list you're going to be on, Dr. Oren. Are you going to be on a list?
I don't know. I'm waiting for the phone call to ring here. The phone's going to ring and let me know. If they call me the flag, I'm going to go to the flag. But I tell you, it's going to be a mess. And, you remember 2016, where the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was really not between right and left so much as between anti-establishment and establishment.
Yes.
And in this election, in Israel, it's not between right and left either. It's between Bibi and anti-Bibi. And you're going to have parties now on the left and the right which are going to be anti-Bibi. Now we have a prominent left-wing party headed by the mayor of Tel Aviv, Ron Khulai, who's a very good mayor. But he's a leftist, and he's going to have to unite with someone like Bennett, who's an extreme rightist. He's going to have to unite with religious parties who will have a hard time uniting with Yair Lapid's party, which is an anti-ultra-Orthodox party. Following all this is difficult. But the only thing they have in common is that they're anti-Bibi. And Bibi can divide and rule. Bibi can entice one of these parties over to his side. I mean, my money's still riding on Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud to win this thing.
Now, when it comes to Iran, Yossi, your friend, pointed out that the anti-Bibiites are stronger than ever, and I replied, look, I really, this is not my country, and I don't follow, the politics are impossible to understand, even though I've spent hours talking with you about them. If you're not an Israeli, doesn't Iran's looming threat strengthen Netanyahu, or is it actually the case that Israelis assume everyone will be Netanyahu-like in opposition to Iran?
Everyone will be anti-Iran in opposition to Iran. Netanyahu has the bona fides of having been out there and fighting the Iran nuclear program since the 1990s. And he had the bona fides of even going to the Congress in opposition to President Obama and giving that speech. Very, very controversial. So no one can in any way cast aspersions on his commitment to fighting the Iranian nuclear deal. But today there's just a consensus across the board in Israel, left, right, up and down, that this deal is a disaster. It's a grave danger for our country. It was negotiated behind our backs. The American negotiators actually lied to us about the talks, about the position of the United States took in those talks. For a country that wants to restore its confidence, the confidence of its alliance, of its allies in the world, the UN, the Iranian nuclear deal is not the way to do it.
So quick, we got 1 minute, Dr. Oren. Is the center left and the center right vote up for grab? Because I kind of think of you as center left, and I'm kind of center right. But is that up for grabs? Is that where this election will be won?
But it's not. Again, it's not center left, center right. It's Bibi anti-Bibi, and those votes that are into the center left, center right within the anti-Bibi camp are going to be very, very fluid. Because people in Greater Tel Aviv who yesterday would have voted for Gideon Sa'ar, who's at least to the right of Bibi, because they vote, even if they're leftist, they vote for Gideon Sa'ar because they want to get rid of Bibi. But now they have a leftist party that wants to get rid of Bibi, so they're going to move from Gideon Sa'ar to that party. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be Bibi and anti-Bibi, and I still think that Netanyahu is going to have a stronger hand. One quick question: by this time next week when we talk, will you know what you're doing? Yeah, I'm going to have to, because we're coming up to the 30-day limit that the parties have to declare after 30 days. All right. Dr. Michael Oren, we'll find out next week. It's like the unveiling of Al Capone's safe. We're going to find out what Dr. Oren's secret plan is next week on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay tuned, America.
edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The argument the president is making is that because so many laws were violated, so many time periods were violated, therefore enough fraudulent votes were filed so that it would overturn the margin of victory for Joe Biden in enough states to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. Do I believe that that's going to work? No. Not because it's not credible, because I don't really know. I've just read the brief by Peter Navarro, which I thought was pretty persuasive. I've heard the denials by Dominion, and Dominion has filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell and others, including Rudy Giuliani. That's going to be very serious. And assuming the lawsuits are not thrown out, there will be discovery, and we're going to really have to have a real discussion and exchange over what happened. It won't be enough to overturn the election, but maybe we can get down to exactly what happened, because truth is a complete defense in defamation. And if Sidney Powell has the truth and she's being sued, she's going to win, plaintiff's going to lose. So we'll find out. I do know this. Hillary told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And as I've talked about the last couple of days, in January 2017, when a man named Donald John Trump was president or president-elect, there were 7 House Democrats, 7, who challenged the electors and said he was elected fraudulently because of Russian interference, and said there'd been voting machine manipulation and malfunction. Is this thing on?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
They're not going to wake up.
I didn't say just the rhinos. I said the rhinos and the milquetoast Republicans.
Fine, the rhinos and the
Roy Blunt.
Right. So that'll really work. That'll really work. That'll do it. Here, give the Senate to the Democrats. That'll wake you up.
Or just keep playing the game and keep getting made a fool of.
Okay, that's purely. It's an emotional response. There's nothing I could say. It's either one or, you know what? Then no, by that logic, no Republican should vote. It should be a 0 votes for the Republican. And the Democrats will just say, boy, did that work. All right, look at how we scare Republicans from voting. Oh, well done, Republicans. You screwed yourselves great. Now we have the whole country, Senate, House, presidency, because some Republicans are pissed off at the election results. That's mature, folks. That is real mature. But listen, the human being is rarely rational. Rarely. That's the tragedy of the human condition. Emotions are more powerful. That's it. So if it's pure, it's 100% true on the left, and it is apparently to some percentage true on the right as well. These attacks on Mitch McConnell, who has done so much. I mean, I hate ingratitude. I hate it, as you know. That's the chief characteristic of every leftist, ingratitude to America. What McConnell has done, I have zero interest in McConnell individually. Zero.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think Jon Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So what happened back in 2018 is Brian Kemp, who made all these wonderful promises about being this rock star conservative. We've aired his ridiculous advertisement many times here on this program. And he takes office. Stacey Abrams never concedes. Now, she never conceded, not out of vanity, because that's how we mocked her. But instead, she was up to something else. She was up to a legal claim and a challenge to change the Georgia voter rolls. So she got advice from some very wise and capable lawyers who told her, do not concede under any circumstances whatsoever, similar to kind of what Hillary Clinton said. We're going to go raise tens of millions of dollars for you to go sue Kemp and Raffensperger. Now, the lawsuit was pretty well put together. The lawsuit, because Stacey Abrams had a lot of money and a lot of time, detailed real human beings that submitted real ballots that were rejected because the signatures were off. She found very good stories to back this up. The lawyers framed them very well, and they sued under a violation of the
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada, Georgia. Go out and vote today. Go and vote. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I am here live. I am here this week when many, many other hosts in America take the week off. And I am here because Georgia is voting. And I am here to tell you so much rides on this. So much rides on returning David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler to the Senate. Do you know how radical Raphael Warnock is? You have no idea how radical it is. Cut number 4.
America, nobody can serve God and the military.
That is simply a lie. He said that from the pulpit. I know millions of people have served God in the military. I know the head of the Christian Officers Association, a retired Marine Corps general. He's no longer the head of it, but he was when he was active duty. I know from privates to 4-stars who put their faith in God. And this cut, number 4.
America, nobody can serve God and the military.
I cannot imagine the Peach State voting for Raphael Warnock. Go and vote for Kelly Loeffler. Jon Ossoff, who's running against David Perdue, is similarly simply unacceptable. Here's Jon Ossoff threatening American citizens for disagreeing with him. Cut number 2.
We need to send a message this year. We need to send a message that if you indulge this kind of politics, you're not just going to get beaten. You're going to get beaten so bad you can never run or show your face again in public.
Tail gunner Jon Ossoff. Yeah, he's worse than Joe McCarthy. Tail gunner Jon Ossoff. You cannot come out in public. Meanwhile, Raphael Warnock. Again, Jon Ossoff is going to get beaten by David Perdue. And Kelly Loeffler is going to beat Raphael Warnock. I got to just play it one more time. Cut number 9.
We pray for the people of Cuba in this moment. We remember Fidel Castro, whose legacy is complex. Don't let anybody tell you a simple story. Life usually isn't very simple. His legacy is complex.
Legacy is not complex. He's a communist killer. I've told you again and again. But the key thing for every Georgia voter to understand, Democrats don't care about Georgia. They don't care about you. They don't care about anything except power. And Chuck Schumer said it on the day of the election. Cut number 1.
Now we take Georgia, and then we change the world. Yeah! I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Schumer? Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
I want to play that again. Chuck Schumer does not care about people in Georgia. He wants to trick Georgians into voting for Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff because he wants power. He does not care about Georgia. He wants to change America. Cut number 1.
Now we take Georgia, and then we change the world. Yeah! I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Schumer? Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
One more time, on the last live day of this broadcast, Chuck Schumer talking directly to the people of Georgia.
Now we take Georgia, and then we change the world. Yeah! I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Schumer? Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
So I urge everyone who is listening in their car, at home, if you live in Georgia or you know someone who lives in Georgia, go and vote today or tomorrow. Those are the last days of early voting. Then there is no voting on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, and then it's Election Day on Tuesday, and we will know on Tuesday night who controls the Senate. If David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are, as I expect, reelected, and reelected thumpingly, and it's important to crush this, by the way, it's important to crush the left. The left in America is simply destructive. It does not have a plan. It wants to redistribute wealth. It is AOC. It is built on envy. It is built on anger. It is built on demands that are outrageous and an anti-capitalism which is not unique to America. It is unique to European socialism. These people are just off of the map of the American political terrain. And Georgia is a military state. And I cannot emphasize to you enough the disaster for American defense policy that will befall this country if Georgia elects Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. As it is, we will have Mitch McConnell as the leader, John Thune as the whip, and Jim Inhofe as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, with a Republican majority that includes Tom Cotton and other stalwarts. People like Cotton who've actually walked in battle, led a platoon in the streets of Iraq during the surge. People like Cotton who are the future of the party. That the need to confront China as opposed to praise Cuba, that is foremost on my mind when I urge Georgia to get out there. I know we have investigations that need to happen of the incoming administration. I know we need a check on power. That will come from Senate committees. That will come from Republican chairmen. I know we cannot afford to keep spraying down the country with money. I know we need to repeal Section 230. I know we need Mitch McConnell in charge of the Senate, checking Nancy Pelosi, negotiating with Joe Biden, his longtime colleague. They may not think alike, and they don't. But they know each other, and they will jointly govern from the center. But Mitch will not have what he needs, and the Republicans will not have what they need if Georgia abandons David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler because they're bored, or because they've turned it off, or because they've been deluged with ads, or because they have not been. Again, the media is so in the bag. Elite media is so in the bag for Warnock and Ossoff. They are not covering these two. It is the same old, same old. I read a story in The Atlantic yesterday by McKay Coppins, who's a friend of mine, talking about how tough it was for journalists in the Trump years. What a load of malarkey, to borrow from the president-elect. It was gold, he alluded to. It was just a gold mine for the book industry on the left. It was a gold mine for my friends at MSNBC. It was a gold mine for every wannabe talking head like Jim Acosta. It was a gold mine for Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff, and they continue the game. They continue to suppress stories, such as the arrest of Raphael Warnock when he was in charge of a camp that was cited for abusive treatment of campers. They continue to suppress simple quotes like the one I've done. This one, cut number 3, Raphael Warnock.
And if it is true that a man who has dominated the news and poisoned the discussion for months needs to repent, then it is doubly true that a nation that can produce such a man and make his vitriol go viral needs to repent. No matter what happens next month, more than a third of the nation that would go along with this is reason to be afraid. America needs to repent for its worship of whiteness on full display this season. How is it that you can insult everybody, call Muslims something other than children of God, call Mexicans murderers and rapists, insult the disabled? How is it you can insult everybody, but then one weekend somebody discovers in the recording that you insult those whose daughters and wives look like those who have been supporting you, and then all of a sudden we can't take it anymore? Gotta repent for the worship of whiteness.
There is no need for America to repent for the worship of whiteness because America does not worship whiteness. I hope you heard my discussion yesterday with Michael Eric Dyson, author of this compelling new book, Long Time Coming. And Dr. Dyson is an esteemed public intellectual, and he defends the idea of whiteness and the idea of white privilege and white comfort and in very moving terms. But he doesn't do it from a pulpit. He doesn't do it in those sorts of terms. I'm actually astonished that Raphael Warnock would come within 20 points of being in the United States Senate. But the people may not have heard that. I am on 13 radio stations in Georgia, and I have the highest listened to talk show on drive time in Atlanta. My number is 1-800-520-1234. You can call me Atlanta. You can call me Georgia. I only want to talk to Georgians, Ben and Harley. 1-800-520-1234. I do not believe that Ossoff or Warnock would be competitive if we had a real media in this country. I do not believe they would be competitive. If 50% of the effort that goes in to exploring and deploring Republicans went into exploring and explaining Democrats, especially hard left Democrats. Raphael Warnock objectively is radical. Jon Ossoff is objectively a socialist. They are objectively far to the left of the American center and way far to the left of the middle of Georgia politics. Objectively. But you may not know that, Georgia. You only know it if you're listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show. I'm going to post this audio, this video, over at HughHewitt.com and on my YouTube channel. Please send it around, this monologue. Send it around so that people in Georgia know, and then go and get out and vote before this election. Go and vote today or on Thursday. Early voting is over on Thursday. Get it done, Georgia. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Let me begin with a market update brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage, AndrewandTodd.com. That's where you go to get the very best refinancing you can, AndrewandTodd.com. Yesterday I was in email contact with Andrew. Interesting case. Retired couple. They have plenty of assets, but they also have a mortgage on their property that's in the fours. And it can go down to 2.75, and their bank of 30 years saying, yeah, you know, your income is, you're retired. They look at our wealth, look at our assets. We're comfortable. We got Social Security, we got an Airbnb, we got all this different stuff. And they say, no, we're not going to do it. Andrew and Todd, boom. Sure, we can do that. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. They think it will be 2.65 or 2.75%. Of course, it always depends on your credit, depends on where you want to refinance, depends on, this is a tricky property, one and two units. You know, there's very interesting stuff going on there. But Andrew Del Rey threw himself into it. And that's what you get with AndrewandTodd.com. When you call 888-888-1172, you get the best advice on your mortgage. Yesterday, the Dow was down 68. The NASDAQ was off 49. The S&P was down 8. But overseas this morning, Hong Kong went up 2%, and light crude's at 48, gold at 1881, and the Germany and England markets are flat as the year-end tidying up of portfolios goes on. I don't think the interest rates will jump over the weekend, but there's one mortgage banker that's working this weekend. It's AndrewandTodd.com. Also, on New Year's Eve, don't forget, From Poor to CEO, it's the great true story, the true story of Herman Cain. Go to salemnow.com and watch it. Salemnow.com. Use my name, Hugh, to get 20% off. Finally, as year-end approaches, head over to HughHewitt.com. Go to the top, Angel Tree Prison Fellowship. Maybe you gave some money. Thank you if you did. If you're one of the 41,000 supporters of children, 41,000 children served by this audience and the audience of Salem hosts like Gallagher and Prager and Gorka and Elder and Charlie Kirk. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. But if you have money left over that you're going to give it to Prison Fellowship and Angel Tree still, because they continue their work year-round. And the banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. Hank in Georgia. Have you voted yet, Hank?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to make a correction. You were wrong in one. I hope you can hear me all right. This is a noisy-ass truck.
I can hear you.
Okay, you said that the American people were smart, and I got to take exception to that. We wouldn't have elected the empty suit in 2008 and 2012 if the people were smart. And if we were smart, this wouldn't be a close contest between the Warnock and Loeffler and Ossoff and Perdue. It would be a blowout.
It should be a blowout. Have you voted yet, though, Hank?
Yeah. Yep. Voted yesterday morning at dark 700 hours.
Has everyone you know voted?
Yeah, my wife did, and she's quarantined pretty much. She's going to have some surgery, so she's got to stay pretty much to herself. But we've got, unfortunately, we've got some Biden supporters, and they got a D next to the name, and that's good enough for them. So,
well, get out there and call everybody you know. I hope it will be a blowout because these two are radical. Ossoff and Warnock are just radical, and I hope it will be a blowout. But we need you to go out there and do your best, and don't worry about the past. Look forward. Let's keep the Senate in serious hands. Thank you, Hank. Peter, also in Georgia. Where are you in Georgia, Peter?
I am in Peachtree Corners.
Well, tell me, have you voted yet?
Yes, I have voted. I just called to let you know that early voting ends today in Fulton County. I'm not in Fulton, but I heard that on the local news and confirmed that on the Fulton County website, which is one of the biggest counties in the metro area. So check your county if you're in Georgia, if you're going to vote early.
And people need to vote early. I'm glad you called and told me that because the information I had is you could vote tomorrow early. Everybody you know, Peter, already voted?
Not yet. I still know some that will vote today or they'll go actually on voting day.
Well, get them out. Are they Perdue and Loeffler supporters?
Absolutely, 100%.
Do not let them sleep. Do not let them sleep on this. Could be, an ice storm could happen on Tuesday. Honestly, I do not understand people who do not vote early today. Peter, thank you I'm coming back with Congressman Mike Gallagher on the Hugh Hewitt Show, America. Stay tuned.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The only way the Supreme Court, the other courts would hear this, is if there was blatant, in-your-face evidence of massive, massive fraud that could not be refuted. And that's somebody from Dominion, somebody standing there and saying, I designed it so it can do this. Here are the guys that did it. Here's the way we've done it. You get something like that, we have a different conversation. But all of these allegations, remember, everybody's going to have another story. There are, I understand, 1,000 affidavits, and I'm sure many of them are people that have observed something very, very shocking and very sincere. But when you ask the other people who allegedly did whatever they did, they're going to have a story. They're going to have a defense. They're going to have a claim. Now, if Sidney Powell is right, that she has evidence that the voting machines were manipulated, I just find it jaw-dropping that the Donald Trump people have not made that allegation. They've not made it. Why? Isn't that the strongest allegation? That the voting machines were manipulated so that votes all of a sudden were counted more for Biden and less for Trump? As opposed to individual allegations of shenanigans when there are always allegations of shenanigans, always. Every close election. People are just paying more attention now. So the salvation will be for Donald Trump through Congress, and that will only happen if enough senators, as John Eastman, his lawyer, said to me, if enough senators believe there is ample evidence in their view that this was stolen. He says it depends on the quality of the evidence, and it's still being gathered right now as we speak, I guess.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Let me understand. You have some sympathy for Georgia voters, Georgia Republicans who won't be voting.
Yeah, I do have sympathy. I can't say for sure that that's what I would do if I was faced with that choice, Dennis. But I think I understand why they feel that way, and I don't believe that it's purely emotional, like you're saying.
It's not only emotional; it is destructive and contemptible. I have contempt for any Republican in Georgia who doesn't vote on January 5th. They are ruining America. Okay. They have no excuse. Dennis, I have contempt for them. Okay,
if we sit down to play a game together, and I cheat, and I keep winning by cheating, is it contemptible for you to quit playing with me?
Really? Do you have a Republican governor in Texas?
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of.
Kind of, fine. Yeah, okay. Do they have a Republican governor in Florida? How did any Republicans win? Are you telling me that everywhere that there is an election now, there is no chance of a Republican winning?
I'm saying anytime the Democrats want to flip their switch, they know how to flip it now, and there's not a whole lot of
so if you believe that, then every Republican should boycott the election and allow 2 Democrats to get the majority for the Democrats in the Senate, right? Be consistent. Why should anyone vote? Why should one Republican vote?
That is precisely what they're saying. And
I know it's what they're saying, and they're fools, okay? They're fools. They should monitor the elections to the best of their ability. They should video everything. Everything should be as transparent as possible. I will not give up the Senate without a fight. It's pure emotion, what you're saying.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lonnie Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. I've got to tell you, the NFL is simply so out of whack. The AFC is to the NFL as the NBA West is to the NBA East. The AFC has got 8 teams with 10 wins, and the NFC has 4 teams. It's a patsy conference. It's full of strawman teams. So if you run up a 12-3 record there, it's like a 9-7 record in the AFC. But Packers fan Mike Gallagher would have you believe his propaganda. He's worse than the Democrats in the House. Mike Gallagher, Congressman, Happy New Year. Good to have you.
Happy New Year. You know, I didn't watch the game, but I just assume the Browns easily beat a patsy team in the form of the New York Jets, one of the worst.
You obviously don't follow
right?
football. You do not know that Roger Goodell hates the Browns, and a game that ought to have been postponed like they did for every other team with 8 starters taken down by the virus. They made him play 8-on-11 football. Of course they lost the Jets.
You didn't win, is what you're saying.
We're going to beat the Steelers. We will see you in the Super Bowl because there's nobody for you to play, right? It's not even, it's just sad. I can't even believe you're going to defend the NFC. This is sad.
We'll see. I would love to have to see you in the Super Bowl, but more than likely we'll be playing the Chiefs in a historic re-meeting of these 2 historic franchises.
Can we get you to admit that the NFC East, which is led by 2 6-9 teams, is a disgrace upon the NFL?
Oh, I will gladly admit that. I mean, when you have the team that shall not be named that resides near Washington at 6 wins, when you have the Cowboys at 6 wins, and both are vying to win that and get a playoff spot, it is an absolutely abysmal division. But I reside in the NFC North, Hugh, and that's all that matters to me.
Are you going to rest the aged Aaron Rodgers this week? Are they putting him in the wheelchair like Ben Roethlisberger is in the wheelchair this week in Pittsburgh?
No, we got to play. We got to get a first-round bye. So this game actually has meaning for us. So Rodgers also needs to solidify his MVP award. So this is and beating the Bears is always meaningful.
They shouldn't even have an MVP in the NFC. They shouldn't have an MVP there. It's not football. Okay, let's get to serious stuff, Congressman Gallagher. Did you vote to override the president's veto of the NDAA?
I did, yes, sir.
Can you tell us why?
Well, particularly since we just suffered one of the worst cyber hacks in American history, this is the most significant piece of cyber legislation in American history. It has 26 of my Cyberspace Solarium Commission's recommendations included in the National Defense Authorization Act to include provisions that are directly relevant to the SolarWinds hack that would have allowed us to get ahead of this, most notably by allowing CISA, the cyber division at DHS, to begin hunting for threats on .gov networks. We have other recommendations to enhance our cyber resiliency for our nuclear command and control systems in the NDAA, establishing a national cyber director in the NDAA, strengthening CISA at DHS, elevating its leadership, giving it more resources. I fear that the SolarWinds attack is a harbinger of things to come, but I'm very proud of the work our commission has done. And again, these provisions are absolutely critical And so that's one big reason why I voted. Also, as an intellectual matter, I just think if you voted for the underlying bill, you should support the veto override. The bill didn't change from when we voted on it for the first time. I'm not sure intellectually I understand the case for voting for the bill and then voting against it. The final thing I'd say, Hugh, is that this is probably the most serious piece of legislation when it comes to deterring China that we've had in decades, if not ever, including provisions such as the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, building on the success of our European Deterrence Initiative to enhance our presence and our deterrent posture in Indo-PACOM, provisions protecting against Chinese industrial espionage, more transparency for Chinese military companies, reporting on Chinese United Front Work Department in the United States and abroad. The list goes on and on. This is a very serious piece of legislation when it comes to deterring China. And as I'm sure you agree, China is our number one threat and will be so for decades to come. And so this is very important, and I'm very proud of the work we did in the National Defense Authorization Act.
This is the last live show of 2020, and I was lying awake late last night, worrying actually, because Jake Sullivan gave an interview to NPR yesterday. I think he's a very smart and worthy successor from the Democratic side to our friend Ambassador O'Brien, who's the current National Security Advisor. But he made some allegations about China policy under President Trump, which are not accurate, suggesting that China policy was driven by concerns for investment banking relationship. In fact, President Trump's team has brought reality to the CCP. It's brought an American understanding to the CCP. Do you fear for that understanding in a Biden-Harris administration, Congressman Gallagher?
I do. Quickly, I did not see Sullivan's claim, but I think it's absurd on its face. I mean, if anything, this administration has just recently enhanced provisions when it comes to investments in Chinese companies and the ways Chinese companies are allowed to list in our markets, sometimes subverting or eliding entirely the same reporting requirements that we subject our own American companies to. So certainly that does not serve the interests of bankers on Wall Street who may want to make a quick buck investing in shady Chinese companies. And so I think the facts just don't support that allegation at all, in addition to what we've done to enhance the requirements for investments in the thrift savings plan, federal retirement benefits, so that they can't be invested in Chinese military companies. So I think that argument falls flat. And I do, as I said before in your program, Hugh, think that Sullivan and others in the Biden administration are really going to have to make an important decision early on that will shape their entire grand strategy and their approach to China. And if indeed they believe that our number one threat geopolitically is climate change, then that will lead them in an entirely different direction than what we have done over the last 4 years in a bipartisan manner, mind you, because our grand strategy was based on the idea that states themselves, not transnational issues, were the primary threat geopolitically, foremost among them China. And so I just very much worry that a lot is going to be sacrificed at the altar of climate change, and it's going to lead, particularly with John Kerry in this very undefined and amorphous role, it's going to lead to a contradictory policy, it's going to lead to a unrealistic policy, and it's ultimately going to lead towards a dangerous policy where we surrender a lot of the gains that we've made over the last 4 years.
Now, Congressman Gallagher, I began reading yesterday your colleague Michael Waltz's book, Warrior Diplomat, and it begins in 2009 when he has left the staff of Vice President Cheney and returned to special operators in Afghanistan, and the destructive impact of the first major decision of the Obama administration, which was to announce a surge and a withdrawal at the same time, undercutting the effects of the surge in Afghanistan. Do you expect any sort of precipitous mistake of that magnitude out of Biden-Harris in their first 6 months?
Well, it's possible, particularly if the CCP perceives that it has the geopolitical breathing space to do something stupid. I know people tend to scoff at the idea of a military invasion of Taiwan, but something like that is not off the table. Certainly North Korea has proven its willingness time and again to test the limits of American patience and power. And so I think faced with a crisis like that, they might back down. And certainly we've seen over the last year when President Trump took action to take Qasem Soleimani off the battlefield, for example, Biden and his aides were quick to blame the United States for subsequent escalation. They were quick to blame the United States when the Iranians shot down a commercial airliner and tragically killed hundreds of their own citizens and foreign citizens. And so certainly in the Middle East, I fear that once they try to get back into the Iran deal and put it back together with duct tape, we're going to see a resurgent Iranian regime that will run roughshod over the entire region. And in that scenario, Hugh, the irony will be that Biden's foreign policy will fall victim to the exact same fate that Obama's is, which is that any well-intentioned effort to pivot to the Indo-Pacific will fail because they'll get sucked back into a very chaotic Middle East because they will misunderstand the fundamental dynamics in that region, and they will walk away from our traditional alliance structure and seek some sort of misguided rapprochement with Iran.
Now, I want to close by talking with you about Team Biden. They do not seem intellectually attached to appeasement in the way that Team Obama was. And by that, I mean President Obama had a deep faith in walking away from American primacy. He was committed to that. He believed in the Iran deal. Joe Biden's been around a long time, including in the Vietnam War, including watching the collapse of Cambodia into barbarism, including the rise of China, including the fall of the Soviet Union. I don't think he is naive in the way that President Obama is. Do you share my optimism?
I think you're right to suggest that Obama was ideologically committed to isolationism and skeptical of American leadership of the free world in a way that Biden isn't. However, and this is a big however, over the course of 5 some odd decades in public office, Biden has repeatedly demonstrated terrible judgment when it comes to geopolitics on key issues. And so I think that's what makes me most concerned. And I do think it's fair to say, Hugh, that the Democratic Party as a whole, and Biden will face these pressures, is committed fanatically to certain things. I mentioned climate change before, but I think all of it can be put in the broader debate over identity politics, a debate which is shaping key personnel choices right now. And I think that's really going to inject tension into their foreign policy approach. And we're going to get a test over the next 4 years as to whether identity politics can survive geopolitics.
Very well put. Last question. Will you be voting for the waiver for General Austin?
I will not be voting for the waiver for General Austin. I recently wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. I'm surprised you didn't devote an entire show to covering that op-ed. Meanwhile, you're reading Waltz's book. I didn't even know Waltz could read, let alone write a book.
Army Marines.
Yeah. So, no, I think, one, we learned some lessons from the Mattis experiment. 2, when you do this 2 times in a row in very short succession, it does erode civil-military relations. 3, General Austin, despite a brilliant career that I look up to very much and personal integrity, brings to the job primarily experience with Central Command in the Middle East when the job requires experience with the CCP and Indo-PACOM. But for more, you can read my op-ed on the Wall Street Journal about.
I'll have to go find that. Whenever I see Gallagher, I'm afraid it's Packers propaganda, so I avoid it. So now that I know it's not Packers propaganda, I will go find it. Congressman Gallagher, Happy New Year. Look forward to talking to you weekly. We're going to have to give more time to Waltz as an Army man. And we got the Marine Corps Navy bias of this show is pretty obvious, but it's a very good book. I would recommend it to you, Congressman. Thank you. Happy New Year, Mike Gallagher. A pox on the Packers and the Steelers, though. America, time for me to tell you about ReliefFactor.com. There it is. Take it every day. Minor aches and pains fly in the face of ReliefFactor.com. Not going to fix a rotator cuff. Not going to replace a knee. Not going to mend a torn ACL. But it will help reduce the minor aches and pains that come with increased exercise. Give it a try. Join the tens of thousands of people who take ReliefFactor.com every day. And please, Honor Bound Coffee, your New Year's resolution. It's an easy one. And if you're a coffee drinker, and here's I've actually got the Minnesota State Fair mug that late James Lilacs, I think he's late because he never shows up on this show. The late James Lilacs gave me this Minnesota State Fair mug, and it's full of coffee every morning. So if you're like me, and you drink coffee every morning, drink honorboundcoffee.com. Subscribe to it. Have it delivered to your house. And the reason is 100% of the profits from Honor Bound Coffee go to support military families. In the aforementioned book by Michael Waltz, Warrior Diplomat, it really begins with an emphasis on the families of the military who bear the burdens and suffer the losses. when their loved ones are doing what they are called to do, fighting wars in distant places or combating piracy on the foreign seas, wherever they go. Support military family. Order Honor Bound Coffee today. Get your coffee from honorboundcoffee.com and come right back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Listen to what Joe Biden said about the actions like the one we saw last night in Minneapolis to literally defund the police.
But I also don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves on dealing with police reform in that, because they've already labeled us as being defund the police. Anything we put forward in terms of the organizational structure to change policing, which I promise you will occur, promise you. Just think to yourself and give me advice whether we should do that before January 5th, because that's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable.
Nothing screams holding them accountable better than stripping $8 million from the police department in Minneapolis, which, of course, will result in... Here's how this works. If you don't have funds for the police, if you funnel them into, mental health counselors, and good luck handling a raging, violent criminal, good luck with that if you're a mental health counselor. Maybe you can sit there and start singing folk music to somebody who's, waving a machete around. Maybe you could go back and ask them if they wet the bed when they were a child as they're, on a rampage. Oh, we're not. But this is a very important clip from Biden. You've got to know exactly his intention.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
If I was a judge in Georgia, I would have been sympathetic to Stacey Abrams' case. Meanwhile, you have the best lawyers in the country arguing fervently. And in opposition, Raffensperger and Kemp that do not know how to fight. They don't have the spine to fight. They don't have the wherewithal to fight. They do not want it. So they got scared. All of a sudden, Stacey Abrams started to call about criminal referrals. She talked about how she's going to get the Department of Justice involved, even though there was nothing to get the DOJ involved. But if you want to mobilize the DOJ, just scream racism and the DOJ gets deployed like the 101st Airborne. You've never seen anything like it. You scream racism, they show up to Bubba Wallace's garage to tell us that a rope is obviously was not put there by the KKK lynch mob. So Kemp and Raffensperger started to get nervous. Kemp and Raffensperger then settled with Stacey Abrams. They settled. Now, this is unconstitutional. And by settling, part of what Stacey Abrams was asking for
Welcome back, America. 51 minutes after the hour. Georgia is on my mind. Get out and vote early today, Georgia. Now, next week's weather, which I checked, appears that it will not be an ice storm. Looks like it'll be sunny and dry on Tuesday, but you never know. It's Georgia. What do I know about Georgia? I know that David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are great senators, and I know that John Ossoff and radical Raphael Warnock are both far to the left of the mainstream. You need to vote early. In Dalton County, it's your last day to vote today. Do not let the Republicans get beat in the early vote. Sets up all sorts of mischief. Mary in Statesboro, Georgia. Mary, have you voted already?
I have indeed. My mother and I went last Tuesday and cast our ballots.
Who'd you vote for?
I'm a Republican. Well, I'm not a Republican. I'm a conservative, but I voted red.
Good for you. What do you think? How do you feel about this?
I'm scared to death.
Well, you've got two scary leftists
Mr. Warnock
running.
I know. And Mr. Warnock is a pastor, but to me, he displays the most blatant, covert racism of anybody I know.
His preaching is definitely influenced by radical views of race. It is definitely there. And I want to know, though, do you talk to anyone who's supporting Ossoff and Warnock?
I try not to. I have tried talking politics with people who are affected by Trump derangement syndrome, and it's a futile effort. Truly it is. I've talked to people who are uncommitted and gotten several of them to register and vote in this past race.
I'm looking at Politico this morning. Strong early vote turnout gives Dems hope in Georgia runoffs. I believe this is just propaganda. I think the media is all in for Warnock and Ossoff and are covering up how radical they are. Do you believe the coverage there has been balanced?
Heck no. There's been no balanced coverage in the last 4 years. Well, actually, in the last 12 years, if you want to count it really and truly, because they fawned all over Mr. Obama, who was a pleasant man but didn't do anything that was outstanding, in my opinion. And Donald Trump may be rough around the edges, but he accomplished so much that was positive. Nobody will see it.
Well, he is showing up.
Anyway,
the president's coming on Dalton on Monday. I do not believe the Georgia media can ignore that. I believe it will. Karl Rove has written a memo. He believes that they're going to be a huge turnout on January 5, and that's good. But I would still love Republicans to get out and vote early and take the wind out of the Democratic sails. I really would like that. Mary, thank you. I want to talk to Tom, also in Georgia. Tom, have you voted?
Yes, sir.
Who'd you vote for?
Duh. All red. No, let me rephrase that to you. All red, white, and blue. That would be not the socialists. In fact, socialists do the most harm with other people's money. That's my motto.
Well, that is good. What about people that you know? Have they voted early? I think this early vote number is great. It's very strong. And when left-wing organizations like Politico, and Politico's just gone hard left, puts out headlines, strong early vote turnout gives Dems hope in Georgia runoffs, that's just propaganda. It's not actually, there's nothing to back that up.
Yeah. Can I say something else, please, sir?
Please.
Okay. I want everybody in the sound of my voice that believes in this country and doesn't believe in socialist evil systems to get a hold of their representatives, call the governor's office, call anybody who's doing monitoring, call their state representatives, call their U.S. Doug Collins, whoever it may be, and the two campaigns, Laureate and Perdue, and demand that we put up plastic barriers like you find in banks. And these are portable. They'll just sit there on the table. I was in a car dealership the other day and they had one right on the table where I was talking. And they had a slot where you could slide stuff back and forth underneath in the slot at the bottom of the barrier, plexiglass clear barrier. When these ballots get opened up, they get opened up right in front of that barrier. So who's ever monitoring, whether it be from the Democrat or the Republican or anybody else that's monitoring this election, that those mail-in ballots and absentee ballots can see what is going on and verify those signatures right there on the spot. This nonsense about social distancing, they're not social distancing when they're counting the votes. What the heck is this? So everybody call and demand, and if it doesn't happen, the voting count, the count stops on the spot, and there needs to be enforcement there on the scene.
All right, Tom, let me tell you the title of my 2004 book. If it's not close, they can't cheat. And it shouldn't be close in Georgia. Ossoff and Warnock are too radical. It should not be close. It should be a blowout. They are not mainstream. They would be immediately, with Bernie Sanders, the most left-leaning members of the Senate. Immediately. Ossoff and Warnock would put Georgia in the most radical left-wing position in the United States Senate. Georgia, get up and go and vote today. No matter where you are, no matter where you hear me. And if you know someone in Georgia, call them. Call them and have them go vote. I will be right back, America. Hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show coming up.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The argument the president is making is that because so many laws were violated, so many time periods were violated, therefore enough fraudulent votes were filed so that it would overturn the margin of victory for Joe Biden in enough states to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. Do I believe that that's going to work? No. Not because it's not credible, because I don't really know. I've just read the brief by Peter Navarro, which I thought was pretty persuasive. I've heard the denials by Dominion, and Dominion has filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell and others, including Rudy Giuliani. That's going to be very serious. And assuming the lawsuits are not thrown out, there will be discovery, and we're going to really have to have a real discussion and exchange over what happened. It won't be enough to overturn the election, but maybe we can get down to exactly what happened, because truth is a complete defense in defamation. And if Sidney Powell has the truth and she's being sued, she's going to win, plaintiff's going to lose. So we'll find out. I do know this. Hillary told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And as I've talked about it the last couple of days, in January 2017, when a man named Donald John Trump was president or president-elect, there were 7 House Democrats, 7, who challenged the electors and said he was elected fraudulently because of Russian interference, and said there'd been voting machine manipulation and malfunction. Is this thing on?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
They're not going to wake
I didn't say just the rhinos. I said the rhinos and the milquetoast Republicans.
Fine, the rhinos and the
Roy Blunt.
Right. So that'll really work. That'll really work. That'll do it. Here, give the Senate to the Democrats. That'll wake you up.
Or just keep playing the game and keep getting made a fool of.
Okay, that's pure. It's an emotional response. There's nothing I could say. It's either one or, you know what? Then no, by that logic, no Republican should vote. It should be 0 votes for the Republican. And the Democrats will just say, boy, did that work. All right, look at how we scare Republicans from voting. Oh, well done, Republicans. You screwed yourselves great. Now we have the whole country, Senate, House, presidency, because some Republicans are pissed off at the election results. That's mature, folks. That is real mature. But listen, the human being is rarely rational. Rarely. That's the tragedy of the human condition. Emotions are more powerful. That's it. So it's pure, it's 100% true on the left, and it is apparently to some percentage true on the right as well. These attacks on Mitch McConnell, who has done so much. I mean, I hate ingratitude. I hate it, as you know. That's the chief characteristic of every leftist, ingratitude to America. What McConnell has done, I have zero interest in McConnell individually. Zero.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think Jon Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Morning, glory, America, bonjour, hi, Canada, greetings to my 400 affiliates, 13 of which are in the great state of Georgia, and you all ought to be headed to vote early for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. I am joined by the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, former Georgia governor, and he is the take I want to hear on Georgia. Good morning, Secretary Perdue. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Hugh. I actually am joining you as a former governor this morning. We want to make sure we stay real legal.
Yep, stay real legal and stay real turnout. What do you make of the early voting in Georgia and the prospects for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler?
Well, we're continuing to be more enthused. Obviously, there was sort of shock and dismay and some anger after the November election where Georgians felt like their votes weren't represented fairly. But we've gotten over that now. There's enthusiasm. I think everyone understands what's at stake, that this is really for the soul of America. And the tagline that David and Kelly are using, "Win Georgia, Save America," is not hyperbole.
Now, there have been a couple of analytics put out, pieces of analytics from 538 and from Politico. The Politico piece is simply Democratic cheerleading. They read in the early voting a big upswell of the black vote, and they say the Democratic congressional districts are turning out in bigger numbers, and there are more voters. Is there any way to actually know that, or is that just cheerleading?
Well, I think there are public records they may be referring to, but again, it's really cheerleading as well, trying to encourage to act like they are winning. I'm on the ground here in Georgia, have been for several days now, Hugh, and I don't see that. I think there's enthusiasm in these towns I've been in Georgia. People understand what's at stake. They understand the heart and soul of America is really hinging on this vote.
Now, I do not believe that the Democrats running there, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, represent mainstream Democrats. I just don't think they are even remotely close to the mainstream of the Democratic Party, much less the center of America. What's your assessment of the Democratic candidate, Sonny Perdue?
Well, you're absolutely correct that they don't represent the mainstream Democrats. They certainly don't represent mainstream Georgia Democrats. These are caricatures that Hollywood has created. I've told people, Hugh, I could understand this more if David's initial opponent 6 years ago, Michelle Nunn, and the governor's opponent, Jason Carter, were in runoffs here. Those are Georgians. Those are real Georgians as Democrats. These folks are just Hollywood actors that have become mouthpieces of the Hollywood liberal elite.
Now, in terms of grassroots activism, I know that Raphael Warnock can preach a bit. I really know he can stir up a crowd, but has the media covered his policy positions, which, again, they are just simply extreme, praising Fidel Castro? Do Georgians know he did that?
Well, they're trying to get the message out, but no, the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about that. But, I mean, if people just listen to what he said, and the advertisements are trying to get him in his own words, that he's refuting now, but he's obviously on record in several occasions, having Fidel Castro in his church, Jeremiah Wright, all these things, his issues with his youth camp, those kind of things that he doesn't want to talk about, his domestic violence with his wife, those kind of things are not being discussed, and the media really is not wanting to touch it, just as they have been really all year with President Trump.
I want to play the most arresting clip of Raphael Warnock, Sonny Perdue, cut number 4 from a 2011 sermon.
America, nobody can serve God and the military.
Do you believe that to be true?
Oh, you know, Hugh, that I don't believe that to be true. As an Air Force veteran, I proudly serve first God, my creator, and then my country in that way, and I did both proudly.
Do Georgians know that Pastor Warnock believes that?
I don't know if they do or not. Again, there's so much money poured in from Hollywood to remake this character. It's like, TV is just powerful, and they can reimagine who he is. And I'm not sure all Georgians, I'm not sure even Georgia Democrats know who he is. I think they're just voting for a label, and that's so unfortunate. This is an embarrassment to me as a former governor of Georgia to have these two candidates representing us for United States Senate. 100 people, the most deliberative body in the globe.
Let me play cut number 9 of Pastor Warnock from 2016. We're getting pretty close to the present day. Cut number 9.
We pray for the people of Cuba in this moment. We remember Fidel Castro, whose legacy is complex. Don't let anybody tell you a simple story. Life usually isn't very simple. His legacy is complex.
Now, Secretary Perdue, Fidel Castro is a communist killer. His legacy is not complex. Do the people of Georgia think that Fidel Castro has a complex legacy?
You and I know that people understand who Fidel Castro is. We've got many Cuban citizens that have come here for freedom and liberty that enjoy the United States, and we see what Cuba has been. Look at Venezuela as well, and the damage that Hugo Chavez started just really 20 years ago there. Georgians get that, but I don't know if they're blind about these Hollywood ads or what, but I'm hoping they're listening.
One last cut from John Ossoff, the empty suit, and I say that charitably. He's also a CCP funds recipient through a cutout company. Cut number 2.
We need to send a message this year. We need to send a message that if you indulge this kind of politics, you're not just going to get beaten. You're going to get beaten so bad you can never run or show your face again in public.
Now, Secretary Perdue, I've been in Georgia a few times, and I don't like the SEC. But even when I'm down talking the SEC, people are polite to me. They don't want me to run me out of the state. John Ossoff, that is just not the Georgia I know.
Well, John Ossoff or Raphael Warnock don't represent the Georgia I know and love and plan to return to as a citizen. And that's why I'm here campaigning for David and Kelly, because truly the soul of the nation holds in the sway of these two elections. That's no hyperbole, Hugh.
Well, let's close by talking about Senators Perdue and Senators Loeffler. Let's assume someone woke up and they're listening to me for the first time. They're flipping around their dial. We're now the highest rated show in Atlanta Morning Drive for a talk show, and we're getting more people every day. Tell them about David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, Sonny Perdue.
Well, I know David obviously better, but he's my first cousin. And what I like about David is he came to Washington and has maintained the same character, convictions, and really courage about some things like term limits that he held when he came here. He had retired as CEO of Dollar General, lived a very comfortable life, and was compelled to serve this country by offering himself the United States Senate, was elected against a strong candidate 6 years ago, and Washington hadn't changed him. He stood with the president over conservative values and accomplishments, and he'll do it again. Kelly Loeffler is a woman in her own right. She grew up as a farm girl in Illinois, feeding hay and feeding the livestock and working in the fields. She's got that rural grit that really defines her, and she also has been a strong advocate of the president's supporter. And I think they're the firewall to keep us from going back from the things that President Trump has accomplished in his term.
You know, that firewall thing, let's close there, Secretary Perdue. I know you've testified to Congress a few times. If the Senate is not run by the Republicans, there will not be one Republican chairman in all of Capitol Hill, and oversight of Team Biden will be minimal, if anything. How important is that to run in the government, to have a check on Joe Biden?
Well, we've always had a check. We would move slightly right or slightly left, depending on elections. This is not a slight turn to the left. This is a sharp 90-degree turn to radical liberal agenda, you know. And not only that, if we don't have the checks and balances, they can easily, by rule, do away with the filibuster, which means that we just have a one-party rule. They can add states. They can pack the Supreme Court. They can do whatever they want to with those 50 votes. And that's why it's so important for people to get out and vote for David and Kelly.
Last question, Secretary Perdue. I have been encouraging Georgians to vote early because, and a lot of Georgians are traditionalists and they like to vote on Election Day. But I always worry about an ice storm in Georgia, which I'm sure you dealt with when you were governor. I worry about crazy stuff happening in Georgia weather because it's a crazy weather state. Should people vote early? Sonny Perdue.
Absolutely. Vote early. We've got today and tomorrow to vote early. And if you can't vote early, vote absentee and get that ballot in. You can track it. And we've got eyes on the polling places this time like we didn't have in November. They can be confident this issue about I'm going to boycott the vote because it doesn't count is foolish. If you don't play, if you don't vote, you don't win. And so it's very important to go vote early today, tomorrow, and make your vote count. That's the only way to send the message that we're going to win Georgia and save America.
Secretary Sonny Perdue, always a pleasure to talk to you. Mr. Secretary, I look forward to talking to you again after the Senate is secure with the re-election of David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler into the United States Senate. Thank you, Secretary. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back. 1-800-520-1234. Listen, if you're in Georgia, give me a call. 1-800-520-1234. I want to hear what you think on the ground, because the mainstream media is pushing out propaganda that the Democrats are winning. I do not believe that. I do not believe that. I don't think it's possible to know. You tell me what you think on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think Jon Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So what happened back in 2018 is Brian Kemp, who made all these wonderful promises about being this rock star conservative. We've aired his ridiculous advertisement many times here on this program. And he takes office. Stacey Abrams never concedes. Now, she never conceded, not out of vanity, because that's how we mocked her. But instead, she was up to something else. She was up to a legal claim and a challenge to change the Georgia voter rolls. So she got advice from some very wise and capable lawyers who told her, do not concede under any circumstances whatsoever, similar to kind of what Hillary Clinton said. We're going to go raise tens of millions of dollars for you to go sue Kemp, and Raffensperger. Now, the lawsuit was pretty well put together. The lawsuit, because Stacey Abrams had a lot of money and a lot of time, detailed real human beings
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, the very excellent TV critic of the Washington Post, is retiring. And after many, many years, Hank Stover is retiring. And I say Stover, it might be Stuver. It's Stuever. I've never heard it pronounced. I've always read his stuff. But Hank is retiring. After doing this for, 11 years, he's just a great TV critic. And he did one last column, which I want to share the bottom line. He said there are 6 shows, 6. He's reviewed 1,200 television shows. 6 that he would replay. And I thought that I began to think to myself, wow, if I could replay 6 interviews. I've done about 30,000 interviews on this radio show, not counting callers. Interviews. Sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 3 hours. And which 6 would I replay? I know I would replay Lawrence Wright on the Looming Tower. There's so many. Donald Trump, George W. Bush, John Kerry, Hillary Clinton. There are so many. I haven't thought about it, but when the television critic of the Washington Post said, you're going to tell you the 6, you listen. They are Twin Peaks, The Return. I've never watched a minute of Twin Peaks. Noted. The Americans, FX. Now that, I watched the first 2 seasons, but I lived that show. That was my job in the Reagan administration at the Department of Justice, was reviewing warrants for the surveillance under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of deep penetration agents, including many Soviets, East Germans in the old days. So it was creepy. It was like reliving my Reagan years. But maybe I have to go back now. Enlightened. I've never even heard of Enlightened on HBO. Transparent, ditto. Have never even heard of it. Lost, which was on ABC from 2004 to 2010. Never watched a minute of Lost. And Mad Men, which I totally did not like. So now, Yellowstone season 3 is running. I got to go watch Yellowstone. That's after I finish Goliath, and then I got to go. So much TV. I hate more than an hour of TV a day. I just don't like it. But after you've walked and run, it's what you got to do. I can check investments, though, for you. Brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. I told you last week. AndrewandTodd.com. I told you last hour, excuse me. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. I just was talking to him yesterday via email about a new mortgage application from retirees. And I thought to myself, you know what? Retirees sometimes retire because they got a lot of money, but they don't have a job, but they got plenty of assets. And a lot of banks don't like that. But AndrewandTodd.com are handling that, and I want you to go out. If you are a retiree, they will take care of you. Call them, 888-888-1172. Don't think, I can't go through the refi process. I've got 4 years left on my 30-year mortgage. Don't think that. Don't throw money away when you're retired. Call them and find out whether or not you can save hundreds of dollars a month on your mortgage and still pay it off in 4 years. They'll help you. So you might have retired after paying 26 years on a 30-year mortgage. I'm just going to pay the next one. Don't do that. Do not throw money away. Check with AndrewandTodd.com. Yesterday, the Dow was down 68, NASDAQ off 49, the S&P down 8. Overseas, England is up just a touch, but Hong Kong is booming. News of the approval of the AstraZeneca vaccine out of the Oxford trial is great. I think markets will rally on that news around the world today. Gold is at 1882. And I think inflationary pressures are going to build. Let me remind you of 2 other things. Over at HughHewitt.com, the Angel Tree appeal continues. Please go there. Please make your year-end contribution to Prison Fellowship via that link at the top of HughHewitt.com. And thank you for doing that. Wesley in Georgia, 30 seconds. Have you voted yet, Wesley?
Sonny Perdue is one of the most intelligent politicians that any of us down here in Georgia know, and you
Agree.
can take what he tells you to the bank. I interviewed him when he was running for governor, and I asked him to flip his business card over and write down the final vote and the percentages, and the man nailed it 18 months out. So he knows his stuff. Rest easy, Hugh. Georgia's secure for Kelly and for David.
Thank you, Wesley. Georgia, in Georgia. Got to be quick, Georgia. Did you vote yet?
I voted already. I just want to tell you I found envelopes on the sidewalk.
I know you told me that already, Georgia. I just want to make sure you voted. Thank you. I got to go to break. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Let's listen to Nicole Wallace, not just on the president, but on all Republicans. Video cut 11.
I think Republicans are concerned that there just might be a little shame injected into the political system again. Under Donald Trump, they could let people go without unemployment insurance because Donald Trump didn't care. Under Donald Trump, they could let people end up in food bank lines because he didn't care about programs to secure their... A lot of people have temporary economic crises that will be alleviated if we kill the virus and people can open up their businesses again. But Republicans don't feel pressure because of the suffering, because people have been suffering for many, many, many months. Republicans are afraid that we might reintroduce shame into the political ecosystem. And I think that what I detect in McConnell is relief. I don't think McConnell liked working with Donald Trump. I think he was craven enough to know that he could put whatever judges he wanted on the United States Supreme Court, just call Don again and say, hey, do Gorsuch, do Kavanaugh next, and let's do a Hail Mary with the real right-wing lunatic. I mean, I don't think that Mitch McConnell has any distress or despair about working with Joe Biden.
That was Michael Steele, wasn't it? Chortling along. Mike, that was Michael Steele. This is incredible. They're lecturing us about shame, and the former chairman of the RNC is chortling along about that deranged woman's attack on all Republicans who said for months and months and months the president didn't care. You mean specifically the 5 months that Nancy has blocked the COVID relief package? Those 5 months, Nicole Wallace?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The only way the Supreme Court, the other courts would hear this, is if there was blatant, in-your-face evidence of massive, massive fraud that could not be refuted. And that's somebody from Dominion, somebody standing there and saying, I designed it so it can do this. Here are the guys that did it. Here's the way we've done it. You get something like that, we have a different conversation. But all of these allegations, remember, everybody's going to have another story. There are, I understand, 1,000 affidavits, and I'm sure many of them are people that have observed something very, very shocking and very sincere. But when you ask the other people who allegedly did whatever they did, they're going to have a story. They're going to have a defense. They're going to have a claim. Now, if Sidney Powell is right, that she has evidence that the voting machines were manipulated, I just find it jaw-dropping that the Donald Trump people have not made that allegation. They've not made it. Why? Isn't that the strongest allegation? That the voting machines were manipulated so that votes all of a sudden were counted more for Biden and less for Trump? As opposed to individual allegations of shenanigans when there are always allegations of shenanigans, always. Every close election. People are just paying more attention now. So the salvation will be for Donald Trump through Congress, and that will only happen if enough senators, as John Eastman, his lawyer, said to me, if enough senators believe there is ample evidence in their view that this was stolen. He says it depends on the quality of the evidence, and it's still being gathered right now as we speak, I guess.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Let me understand. You have some sympathy for Georgia voters, Georgia Republicans who won't be voting.
Yeah, I do have sympathy. I can't say for sure that that's what I would do if I was faced with that choice, Dennis. But I think I understand why they feel that way, and I don't believe that it's purely emotional, like you're like.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I just tweeted out an alert. That message from Len, that's his handle, was going to be on the show with me for the very first time. The week before I left D.C. for California for the holidays, I had a chance to have dinner with Len Khodorkovsky. And I was fascinated. And we had dinner with Undersecretary of State Keith Kruk, and I was fascinated by him too. But Len was a revelation to me. And then along comes this Jerusalem Post profile of Len Khodorkovsky. He is the chief marketing officer and senior advisor in the Office of the Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. He's been at the State Department for a few years. He was previously senior advisor for public affairs in the Iran Action Group, deputy assistant secretary for digital strategy in the Bureau of Global Public Affairs, and all-around marketing genius. Len, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Great to have you.
Wow, Hugh, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be on your show. And listen, I always wanted to say this, first time, long time.
And I always ask, have you read The Looming Tower? That's my go-to question for first-time guests. Have you ever read The Looming Tower?
A while back.
I knew you had, given your depth of knowledge of Iran. Len, this Jerusalem Post profile, I'm very proud of myself. I had dragged most of these stories out of you in our 4-hour dinner, but there were still some I didn't know. And I just want you to tell people where you come from and why you bring such passion to the strategic communication campaign of the United States Department of State.
Well, thank you very much, Hugh. Look, I'm a Soviet refugee. I came to the United States with my family when I was 11. We come, my grandparents going way back, or my great-grandmother, died of starvation in the ghetto, in the Nazi ghetto. And my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. They barely squeaked by. And my grandfather was liberated by the Russian army. They threw a uniform on him and put him in the Russian army to fight in the Second World War. Unbeknownst to me, which is something I found out 30 years later, is that his high school sweetheart was actually his first wife, not my grandmother, and she passed away unbeknownst to him while she was bringing a care package to him when he was stationed with the Russian army. She froze to death in the woods on her way to take care of my grandfather. Needless to say, my family barely made it out and ended up being in the Soviet Union. My grandparents hated communists. My parents learned to live with communism, but always wanted to get out. And one day, in the, early 80s, in 1981 to be precise, after our family was refused for a number of years and my parents were demoted, and of course, Jews in the Soviet Union were second-class citizens. Some guy shows up on our doorstep and wants to see an apartment where I and my parents and my grandparents all lived together, and left. And a few weeks later, he came. My dad took me out to a soccer match. We come back. I run up the steps and I see this postcard wedged in the door. I take it out. I give it to my dad. I knew it was something really important, and turned out to be that was our permission to leave the Soviet Union, because the guy who wanted the apartment was a KGB officer. And that was that. And we had 3 weeks to pack up, sell everything we had. It was dead of summer in 1981. We were all wearing, 3 layers of clothing. Boarding a train, I remember saying to my parents, my grandparents, "Are we homeless now?" Because I've never known anything but Soviet Union. And at some point, I guess about a month or 6 weeks later, we walked through the doors at JFK in New York, and we're in America. And no one spoke English, obviously. We were just happy to be out and starting a new life in the greatest country in the world. And there's so much more to talk about, but that's the long and the short of it.
Well, Len, there is no short of it. I hope you write a book. I know you've got a lot on your plate when you leave the State Department in a few weeks, and I want to talk about that in a moment, and about the Jamestown group. But I want to play for you a news story, because given what you just told, I want to play Raphael Warnock, who wants to be a United States Senator from Georgia. Cut number 9. This is a sermon in a church in 2016.
We pray for the people of Cuba in this moment. We remember Fidel Castro, whose legacy is complex. Don't let anybody tell you a simple story. Life usually isn't very simple. His legacy is complex. Kind of like America's legacy is complex.
Len Khodorkovsky, what do you make of that, given the biography which you just retold to our audience?
Well, there's nothing complex about communism or Fidel Castro or any other form of authoritarianism where the government gets to decide for individuals how they should live, what they should think, and how they should behave. I think it's absurd and crazy. Clearly, this person has no idea what he's talking about. Anyone who's lived under communism knows better. And I hope the Georgians who get to decide in a few short days really take what President Trump said to heart, which is America will never be a socialist country. And when my family came to America, it was it was a privilege. It was an honor. I still don't take it for granted. Freedom is synonymous with the United States of America, and there is no freedom under communism. So it's really a simple issue. Reverend Warnock or anybody else who thinks it's something more complicated is at the very least extremely misguided, and I would say not qualified to represent people in the United States of America.
I 100% agree. Now, I didn't tell you this at dinner, but I've been asked before, what are the most influential books in your life? And I always tell people, well, of course, Scripture, but followed by One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich and Vladimir Bukovsky's To Build a Castle, My Life as a Dissenter. Those are the two most important books in my life that are not religious books, because they taught me everything I needed to know about communism and fascism and authoritarianism. And I think it divides the world. Either you understand that or you don't. And if you don't, you'll say stupid things like Donald Trump is a fascist, or you'll say stupid things like Fidel Castro is complex, Len. But if you understand it, you're able to message about Iran in a way that nobody else is. I think that's what made your messaging for Keith Kroc and Secretary Pompeo so effective.
Well, thank you, Hugh. I mean, I only know one way to communicate, and that is simply, clearly, and in a way that anybody could remember what I'm trying to say. And that's what I'm not someone who spent my life in politics. I was in advertising for 20 some odd years. in New York. That's where I come from. I was fortunate enough to end up working on President Trump's 2016 campaign with Jamestown Associates, and let me just give a shout out to Larry Weissner and Jason Miller, who took a chance on hiring me as their creative director. It was a privilege to work for them, and that's really was my segue to working in the administration after President Trump was elected. And so, that the communicating in a way that understands what your audience is thinking, feeling, and really wants from you or from your product is what it comes down to. And so it's really simple formula. And I try to bring what I know to serving my country and working for Secretary Pompeo and trying to connect with regular people around the world, whether it be in Iran or Iranian Americans or people, Cubans who want nothing more than to provide a better life for their children, or Venezuelans, or even people who are living under the Chinese Communist Party right now.
So what are you going to do?
Formula.
What are you going to do next, Len? People ought to follow you at Message from Len in order to find out what you're up to, because I came to appreciate this rather late in Team Trump era. But what are you going to do?
Well, after I caught the bug of working on some consequential issues at the State Department, it's going to be pretty hard for me to go back and sell toothpaste or used cars, and so. Listen, I hope to stay relevant. I hope to contribute my voice to some of these consequential issues that I was fortunate enough to work on. Whether it's Iran or China or Abraham Accords, peace in the Middle East is extremely important. And honestly, it's one of the few uplifting stories of this year. I'm really encouraged by what's going on in the Middle East, and I hope that my voice will contribute toward building a better and a better world for my children and for humanity in general. I don't know. Is that too broad of an ambition?
No, I want to know though if you're going to stay. There is, for example, a public relations battle underway right now to stop the United Arab Emirates from getting the F-35, and they led with Israel this Middle East Abraham Accord. If we turn our back on allies and go back to dealing with enemies, it will be disastrous. And there will be people like you upon whom the country will depend to talk about why the UAE needs F-35s, why Israel needs the qualitative military edge. Are you going to stay in that particular arena?
I hope so. I hope to find an outlet that will allow me to do that. Listen, when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East, I think the core the most important word, as Undersecretary Kroc always says, is trust. And what made all of these positive things happen in the Middle East is we rebuilt trust with our friends and allies in the region, and that's what really is the glue that's holding all of those peace agreements together. And in my view, if there's any hope for progress, it has to remain wedded to this idea of trust, having the trust of our allies trusting us, and when we speak, we have to mean what we say. And that's always been my approach, and that's what I hope to continue.
Well, I hope everyone follows Message from Len on Twitter. I hope they go read my Twitter account to get the Jerusalem Post profile of Len Khodorkovsky. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Len, and I want everyone to get smart and to follow you, and I appreciate all the work you've done on behalf of the United States and peace in the Middle East and for the people of Iran and China and Cuba and everywhere else where authoritarianism rules. You are a formidable opponent, and I'm glad of that. Leonard, thank you. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. Tarzana Joe is here with a year-end poem. But first, let me remind you, per usual, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Make it a New Year's resolution. You don't have to hurt as much as you hurt. I want you to go out and get it and try it and live the ReliefFactor.com effect. We had a caller earlier. I was going to get to him right now. I went out a little bit, but they hung up. Who wanted just to praise ReliefFactor.com. It happens every now and then. I don't ask people to do that. They just call up and they say, this stuff is marvelous. It's terrific. And they've never used a supplement. I never use that. The only supplement I take is ReliefFactor.com. I turn down everyone else. Not a big supplement guy. I take my vitamin in ReliefFactor.com. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, omega. I just don't take supplements. I figure that's what food is for, right? Well, it's not. You need a vitamin. You need your vitamin D, especially in the era of COVID. And if you exercise, you need ReliefFactor.com. And if you're getting older, you need ReliefFactor.com. And you're going to fall into one or both of those groups because you're older than when I began talking about it. Don't go anywhere except to ReliefFactor.com. Come back for Tarzana Joe after the break on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Listen to what Joe Biden said about the actions like the one we saw last night in Minneapolis to literally defund the police.
But I also don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves on dealing with police reform in that, because they've already labeled us as being defund the police. Anything we put forward in terms of the organizational structure to change policing, which I promise you will occur, promise you. Just think to yourself and give me advice whether we should do that before January 5th. Because that's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable.
Nothing screams holding them accountable better than stripping $8 million from the police department in Minneapolis, which, of course, will result in... Here's how this works. If you don't have funds for the police, if you funnel them into... mental health counselors, and good luck handling a raging, violent criminal. Good luck with that if you're a mental health counselor. Maybe you can sit there and start singing folk music to somebody who's, waving a machete around. Maybe you could go back and ask them if they wet the bed when they were a child as they're, on a rampage. Oh, we're not. But this is a very important clip from Biden. You've got to know exactly his intention.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
If I was a judge in Georgia, I would have been sympathetic to Stacey Abrams' case. Meanwhile, you have the best lawyers in the country arguing fervently. And in opposition, Raffensperger and Kemp that do not know how to fight. They don't have the spine to fight. They don't have the wherewithal to fight. They do not want it.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, last live segment of 2020, a year best forgotten, but Tarzana Joe is here, the official poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, to celebrate it in verse, I think.
I think, yes, you're right. Happy New Year's Eve.
And to you too, Joe.
Here we go. I've lived a lot of years, and though I'd never want to miss one, I didn't expect in all my life to see a year like this one. History, I used to think, was read about in books, but But now, at last, I've had a glimpse of how it really looks. I've never seen a global war or carnage on this scale, reason reeling in retreat while hotter heads prevail, chaos in the country and riots in the city. If this is living history, it isn't very pretty. The enemy oppressing us is tricky to resist. We want to join the fighting, but there's nowhere to enlist. I'm glad that I survived it. The same for you, my friend. But this sums up my thinking as December's near its end. Some are glad it's over. I'm afraid it's just beginning. It's not a stretch to say, at best, we're in the seventh inning. You can't sit on the sidelines when it's time to take the field. Rally your commitment. Make sure your spirit's steeled. You've heard perhaps the message that your day is not complete unless you take sufficient time to love and pray and eat. But should you want to shape the place this world is coming to, I suggest you're better off to think and plan and do. This is TY3, that was the year that was, by Tarzana Joe.
TY3, the year that was. So, Joe, that will be posted at TarzanaJoe.com.
Indeed, almost immediately.
And TarzanaJoe at Reagan.com is where people go to get their poetry needs of 2021 met.
Absolutely.
Are you working over the long weekend?
I'm looking at my inbox here. I have an early January poem or two due.
Well, I want to say to you, Joe, Happy New Year, and to all of the Tarzana Joe clan, Happy New Year's to them as well. And how will you be celebrating in lockdown California?
Well, since I've had to give up salt, red meat, and alcohol, I'll be having a tofu salad to celebrate.
I know. We've got a similar celebration planned at Team Hewitt. Well, thank you, Joe, and Happy New Year, and I'll talk to you in 2021. I want to say Happy New Year to all of the listeners of the Hugh Hewitt Show as well. What a year for radio. What a year for Dwayne and Adam and Ben and Harley and Danielle and everyone who works on this team, everyone at Salem. You know, I've got a YouTube channel, which I really would like for you to subscribe to because they work so hard at it to make it the very best YouTube channel on all of broadcasts. So head over to YouTube and subscribe to HughHewitt.com, the Hugh Hewitt channel. Also, please follow me on Twitter. I will be tweeting out over the weekend. I'm about to sit down to write my Washington Post column to conclude the year. I've been waiting. I'm waiting for local officials everywhere to deliver the goods on the virus. We've got this amazing vaccine because of Operation Warp Speed, and local officials seem perplexed, confused. But I really want you to send out the word to Georgia. Send out the word to everybody you know that they've got to go and vote today. I wanted to close 2020 with an appeal to make the next 2 years livable by making sure Mitch McConnell and the Republicans control the upper chamber. And it's up to you, Georgia. You have to put a check on the left wing, the hurtling to the left party of the Democrats. And Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff are radical. And David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are mainstream. And early voting is safe and secure. Get up and go and vote today. Politico, honest to goodness, the Democratic propaganda machine. Politico has a pure propaganda piece for Democrats, and after I criticized it, they went back and edited it without telling anyone and added a quote from my earlier hour of this interview. That's how in the bag Politico is, and Washington Post writers and New York Times writers and major network personalities. They are so in the bag for the Democrats. They want Chuck Schumer, and Chuck Schumer wants Georgia. Cut number one.
Now we take Georgia, and then we change the world. Yeah! I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Schumer? Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
That is the penultimate poll for 2020. The other one is Raphael Warnock on the American military. I believe that is cut number 4.
America, nobody can serve God and the military.
That is the final cut of 2020. That is a lie. That is wrong. That is disqualifying. John Ossoff is disqualified by virtue of just being an empty suit. But Raphael Warnock, he may be a great preacher. He would be a terrible senator. So listen, Georgia, you have 2 great senators, David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. Go and vote today. Do not delay. Sonny Perdue started this hour. David Perdue was on yesterday. I will remind you on Tuesday if you did not vote to get out and vote. I'll remind you on Monday to get out and vote. But this weekend is coming up. Go and do it today. Then you'll go into do you're confident you have done your job as a citizen to protect the United States Constitution, to protect the American military. And Georgia, it's all to you. Honestly, you give all three branches of government to the Democrats, they will expand the Senate. They will add states. They will end the filibuster. They will expand the Supreme Court. They will defund the police. They mean what they say. Believe them when they said it. All right, Georgia, my final words of 2020 on the air. Georgia, go out and vote for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Dwayne, for a terrific year, number 21. Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Harley, for less time, but still great service. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back in the new year, live, tomorrow with Dr. Larry Arnn, recorded on The Hugh Hewitt Show.